Hello and welcome to another episode of Anniversary Edition. Today we are going to be talking about Goldfinger, which celebrates its 55th anniversary this year. Obviously we're going to spoil the film, so please do go and watch the movie. Come back and have a little listen. I'm Sophie and I'm here today with Tom.
Hello.
Hey Tom. So this is a 1964 British spy movie.
Yeah.
It was the third installment in the James Bond series. And directed by Guy Hamilton. I've written a little synopsis. I mean, it's kind of obvious because it's in the title.
Yeah.
In this one. So, James Bond investigates gold smuggling by Auric Goldfinger and discovers a much more ambitious plan to contaminate and break into Fort Knox gold reserve.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. So that's our little synopsis for the movie. Tom. Top line. Do you like this movie?
I do, yeah. Yeah, I like James Bond films generally.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few I don't like, but yeah, I'm a fan of James Bond.
Yeah.
Seen all the films, read the books.
All the books?
All the books.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay, I'll qualify that. I've read all of the Ian Fleming books.
Right. Okay.
And I've read all of the Charlie Higson and Steve Cole Young Bond books. Which are about Bond when he's at school.
Yes.
But I haven't read any of the others that have been done by people like Raymond Benson and Sebastian Faulks and all of that.
All of those.
Yeah, so I haven't read those.
Okay. So my top line, I kind of like this.
Yeah.
It was all right. It's so different to the Bonds that kind of stayed with me.
Interesting.
I think it's an age thing because we talked a bit last week, like when we were talking about, who's your James Bond? And I think it's difficult because I think it's probably Daniel Craig and a little bit of Pierce Brosnan in there because that was who was James Bond when I kind of was going to the cinema. So my memories of James Bond is sort of a bit more contemporary. He's a bit more. He's a different characterization of James Bond, I think. Pierce Brosnan.
Yes.
More similar when compared to Daniel Craig than
Connery.
Yes, more similar to Connery. Sorry, than compared to Daniel Craig's and Connery.
Yeah.
But sorry, that was a really poorly put together sentence. What I mean is, James, the James Bond that you see here is more similar to the James Bond you see by Pierce Brosnan.
Yes.
Versus the James Bond that you see by Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of found myself a little bit bored.
Yeah, didn't click so much.
No. And I really wanted to like it. And I like James Bond. Like I like the movies that I've seen. I find the concept really interesting. I like spy movies, like thrillery kind of. It's probably not my go-to genre, but I do like them. But I don't know. I don't know if it's because it was a bit too aged or a bit too. Oh, it's like stereotypically James Bond.
Well, I think this is like the quintessential Bond. Like if you sum up what everyone thinks James Bond is, I think it's Goldfinger.
Yes.
Like
okay. I think that's fair.
There's the womanizing, there's the gadgets, there's the there's the action and the ruthlessness and all that kind of stuff, and the the villain with the crazy plot, and so I think it kind of like encapsulates everything that everyone thinks James Bond is, and it's
a pretty good kind of. You can't really be a James Bond fan, watch this and not like it. There's something in there, for every James Bond fan. Yeah. I just didn't like James Bond in this film. Yeah, I just thought he was a bit of an idiot.
It's interesting, like watching some of these back as to, as times change, as perceptions change, as society changes.
Yeah.
Like looking back on some of these older films, there are some that you just grab you and everything's fine. Then others you're like, oh, that's kind of quite dated now. And I have to say, watching Goldfinger this time round, I did find it also more dated than I had previously.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I still enjoy it. It's still a Bond film, and I like the character and stuff like that. But there was more in it that I was just like, oh yeah, okay, that falls a bit flatter now than it did maybe even 10 years ago, or when I was a kid when watching it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I think what it highlights and what is highlighted at the moment is that James Bond was very much of its time then, and they've revamped it and modernized it and changed it over the years, and they've tried to evolve, and you start to wonder whether the concept of a character like James Bond is becoming not that relevant anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
And and I love like big action movies, Bond films, and stuff like that. But I have a feeling at the moment they're really struggling to hit the mark.
I feel like they can't get James Bond right now in this time. I think you're totally right. I think, Daniel Craig did a really good job with Casino Royale, particularly, because I haven't seen all of the new ones. Right. Sorry, qualifying statement. I have not seen all of the new James Bond films. Yeah. But I really loved him in Casino Royale. And it's because he made James Bond more human. Yes. For a lot of people.
So Casino Royale, the Daniel Craig version, is much more. I feel like they definitely went right back to the books, and they added a bunch of stuff in, like the whole chase sequence at the airport and stuff like that. And it did kind of hark back more to him as a character, because I think he's much more human and vulnerable in the books than he ever was on screen. Yeah. And I think Daniel Craig has embodied that a bit, and they've kind of lost their way a bit with it. I think over the last few, they've started to do things, and it's like,
because I haven't seen. I think it's the last two. That's probably where I got lost a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed Casino Royale a lot. Wasn't that fussed by Quantum of Solace, which was the one after it. Skyfall, I thought was quite good. There was some nice nods to like they bring back the Aston Martin from Goldfinger.
Yes, okay, so that was in my notes, the Aston Martin. I was like, the Aston Martin?
Yeah. Well, this is the first time you see, that's the first Aston Martin.
Okay,
that's the first time.
Way more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is its debut in this movie, in Goldfinger.
Okay.
So yeah, I think you're right. Like Bond now, and there's this whole thing about should Bond be black? Should Bond be a woman? And it's all of that kind of stuff's coming on, and it's like, well,
it's like, how far do you take a character away from the way a character was written? Yeah, how far do you move something away from the source material to make it relevant? Yeah. And actually, if it's not relevant and he can't work, or the character, he, she, whoever, can't work as the things that make that character specifically that character. Yeah. Like, is it relevant anymore? Yeah. Like, I think it's watching this threw up loads more questions than I had anticipated it would. Yeah. But it's not really about the film. Like I think that's maybe why I got bored, because I was like,
oh wait, but
I'm kind of over the film.
Yeah.
I was like, I just want to talk about like all the things that are wrong, not wrong with it because that's really unkind, but like things that just don't work or that don't make sense, or that you think, oh, that really, like, he's so disposable of women. And the girl that dies at the very beginning, and then his sister's trying to get vengeance, and then his sister just dies, and you're like, oh my God, it's just awful. And he just, there's like a 10-second zoom in on his face where he's like, oh, I feel a bit bad about that. And then he's fine. Yeah. And you're just like, well, and I'm thinking of sort of the Casino Royale James Bond. You kind of, you don't forgive it, but you think, okay, so, that's why you are like that, because of everything that happened before. Yeah. But there's no, I don't know, there doesn't seem to be any depth behind it in Goldfinger.
I think it's because because of the time.
They didn't need to.
Didn't need to. And so I find interesting in the books that Bond tends to be much more, you find out much more about his attitudes to women, and there are women he has flings with and that kind of stuff, but he falls in love a couple of times. He gets married. There's you know, and there's all sorts of things like that happen in the books. And there's one where he has this long. He's sort of torn because he meets a woman who's he's really attracted to, but she's really heavily traumatized about men and her sexuality. So he almost feels like he wants to look after her in a, you know, like he wants a relationship with her, but he doesn't want it to just be another like traumatic fling for her. So there's like, and it's a bit more. I don't know. There's a lot more going on in his psyche in regards to women, and than they did particularly in the 60s and 70s, where they did become very kind of disposable. And then now with Casino Royale, they
started to bring that element to life a bit more.
Yeah, because it was based on one of the actual books. Because there are only so many books, and they covered off most of those in the 60s and early 70s. So they're sort of scrabbling around, and I think that's kind of the problem with the current franchise is that they're they started off with however many books it is, 10 or 12 books that Fleming wrote, and they were like, oh, great, here's our universe, we're going to make these into movies. And now they're just like, we've got to make the next one. They
and
do
it's
it
going to be bigger and better and more stunts and more this and more that.
And then it's like, oh, now what are we going to do for the next one? So and now they're bringing in this possible idea of making Bond a woman, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I have a feeling that it won't work for this franchise. So I have a feeling it might alienate the really hardcore fans, but I don't think it's going to necessarily bring in the audience that they want it to, perhaps. Yeah. Because it brings with it all of the stuff that audience isn't interested in. I think if I were like the Broccoli's thinking about the franchise, if you look at what they do, they make a Bond movie every 2 years, and they cost 150 to 200 million or whatever they cost. I would, after this Daniel Craig one, stop making James Bond movies as they're making them now.
Okay.
And maybe think about doing, like, assuming you can raise the same, like, assuming they can raise the same money they would for another movie, I'd split that in two and spin off 2 movies.
Oh, okay.
I'd make I'd originate a new character within that kind of universe. So you could have characters like M and Q and all of that kind of stuff. So you could have all of that stuff as well. And that, you could make that easily be a woman. It could be another 00 agent, or it could be someone who's trying to attain their 00 status. Okay. Something like that. And that way you could find a new audience with a different character. Yeah. But still allow the old school thing to exist and to have to keep your core fans who may be less interested in that happy. But at the same time, what I do is I would think about going down the Harry Potter route.
Okay.
In planning a franchise from its very beginnings. So you kind of write a line under it, do a spin-off of modern action movies.
Yep, okay.
And then I would go back to the Charlie Higson Young Bond novels, cast a kid who's 11, and we start in the 30s, James Bond at school.
Wow.
And you do those as almost like they did with the Harry Potter. You and then that new generation of kids grow up with, like, you think how many millions upon hundreds of millions of Harry Potter fans there are around the world because they captured them.
Hey, everyone.
Because they captured them at the right age.
Yeah. I mean, I'm of that era. Like, I mean, the first book came out, I think, the same year that I was my first year was at secondary school.
Right, yeah.
Or maybe the second when I was in second year. But
yeah.
It's a whole new generation.
Yeah. So they've got 9 books already in that series. And you could easily then, that you could take the next decade making those movies, right? And in that time, fill in the gap where basically Bond's war. So basically between him leaving school, going into the Navy, becoming a commander, all of his adventures throughout the war, and then Casino Royale again. And then you do the book. You do the books in order, and you keep them in the books, and you keep them in period as well.
I was going to say, would you keep everything in period?
Absolutely, yeah. So it starts in the 1930s, and it goes all the way through the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
And I reckon that's, and then so you say to all of the everybody, then you bring in an absolutely new generation. You look after your core fan base because they'll be interested in that as well.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you have the ability, because they've got the ability to make massive budget movies, to spin off 1 or 2 or 3 big action franchises that are set in the modern day, that are progressive, that do feature a female lead and all that kind of stuff, and that are more relevant than Bond can ever be.
Exactly. You're not trying to rehash remnants of a character that just was born of his time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because what makes James Bond, a lot of it isn't really acceptable anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I think, as well, why I was just like, I'm bored of watching this movie.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. It's frustrating because you don't want to talk about, it's a cliche and he's a womanizer. Because there's so much more going on than that.
Yes.
It's an action film. It's a spy thriller. There's plays of power, there's cunning, there's resourcefulness in fighting, and there's all this stuff going on. But actually, all that happens is you're just like, well, it's just not really relevant anymore because he doesn't work as a character today. Like, it is kind of, it's not well, it is kind of offensive as a woman. I'm sorry, it just kind of is. And but it's because he's not treating them well. If he was treating them in a way that was, I guess, deemed slightly more acceptable at the time, if he was kind and, loving and a good guy with women, it's just that in itself was dated, like Fred Astaire, and Ginger Rogers, all those kind of, people nowadays. If you made a character who treated a woman like that, no, that's not okay to chase someone when they've said no, because no means no. But if you put it back in its environment of its time, it's slightly different. Whereas James Bond is just a bit of an idiot with women, like in his time as well. It's not like he's doing something that's just outdated. He's just an arse, basically.
No, I see that.
It's difficult.
I mean, I think like with these ones, I can still watch back and enjoy them, because I think you get into that headspace of, they're of their time. There are things that do niggle. But actually, it's funny. There's one thing that always stands out to me. It's in Man with the Golden Gun, and that's the second one that Roger Moore does, where he actually hits a woman.
Oh,
and
I don't think I've seen
that. And that always kind of is like, well, first off, it's Roger Moore, who's always kind of seen as much more the smoother,
like gentleman,
less edgy Bond. So that always kind of makes me go, and it just, those things kind of stick out a bit. And there are, you get he's this guy who's in these situations and there's all the stress on, but you can't excuse certain things anymore.
No, that's the thing. He treats women badly.
And even
you can't get away from that.
Even of its time, it's bad, like you say.
Exactly.
So
it's just always bad. There's never an acceptable time to place that and be like, oh yeah, that's fine. He's very disposable of women in this, and that's what I particularly didn't like. Even in the very first scene where he's with the girl who's one of the dancers, I think, downstairs. And she sees obviously out the corner of her eye because she's there to distract him, or whatever her role is in that, and he just leaves her for dead. Does the other guy hit her or something? Or James Bond turns round, so he moves out the way and she takes the hit. something like that happens.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. No. But one of the things I did actually really like was, so obviously Daniel Craig is a very different type of Bond. And he's like a built guy, and he's really kind of looks like he's you wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley on the wrong night, right?
No.
Whereas in this, I love that because it's not that type of Bond.
Yeah.
He's much more resourceful in fights. So, like, you know, when he flips the electrical thing and electrocutes the guy in the bathtub, I'm like, oh, yes, because you're not going to win in a fight because actually that guy is stronger than you.
Yeah.
So I liked that about it, that there was this more kind of like realistic.
Yeah, a bit more, you see his smarts a bit more rather than his brute force.
His brute force. And I was like, okay, I like that. Because, you know, you aren't a stacked, like, massive guy that's going to...
But then people didn't tend to be in the 60s. I mean, Connery was 6'4", so he's he's a big man.
Yeah.
So he's quite imposing. But you're right, he's not like that. He's not a brawler.
Yeah,
he
doesn't look like
come
kind
across
of
that way.
Rugby, really broad. I'm going to just sort of throw a punch and knock you down.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that fight sequence compared to the one at the beginning of Casino Royale that's black and white in the toilets.
Oh my gosh!
And that's just like that's brutal, kind of, and it's heightened by that really grainy,
definitely
like, look to it. But you're right, he's a different, and he's a bit more resourceful in how he kind of gets out of his situations.
Yeah, because he has to be. He has to rely on other things other than his, his fighting skill.
Yeah.
So obviously, like we've talked a little bit about this, I suppose, but I can't remember when I first saw this all the way through, and I'm not sure that I ever have,
really,
apart from this time.
Right.
I've definitely seen bits of it. Yes. Like there was so much that was familiar, but I was like, God, have I ever actually sat down and watched this all the way through with no interruptions? And I don't know. I can't answer because I don't know.
Right.
But when did you first see this? Would you have seen this?
I was a kid.
You were a kid?
Yeah. I mean, it's that typical bank holiday Bond movie thing. And, and of course, I love cars and the gadgets. And when you watch them at that age, all of the womanizing stuff you don't even see it because you don't take in the sort of
not
sexual side of it.
Don't notice.
But you do take in the funny quips. Like, for example, we're talking about when he electrocutes that guy.
Yeah.
He's like, shocking. And it's just there are little quips like that you pick up on, and you see, like, there's the cars and the gadgets and the action and all that kind of stuff. So I probably would have seen a lot of the Bond films, from probably the age of 6, 7 onwards.
Yeah, because they were just on TV.
Yeah, and I think when I was a teenager, I can remember my friends and I were trying to list. So this is obviously in the days before IMDb. We were trying to list all of the James Bond films because someone said, "Oh, there are X amount of Bond films."
Okay.
And I could name all of them, but I was one missing.
Interesting.
And I think like that weekend we went into Virgin Megastore, as it was.
Oh God.
Yeah, and they had them all on VHS for like $5.
Wow.
So I bought the one that I couldn't remember, which was Octopussy. And then I started just picking up, and then I started getting back into like actually watching them as movies, and started picking them back up and got more into them and read some of the books and that.
I was going to say, is that when you read the books?
Yeah. So I think actually I read the first book when I was about 12 or 13.
Okay. So
yeah, because I remember, I think I was in the library with my mum and we were looking for books and stuff like that. And On Her Majesty's Secret Service was in the young adult section.
Oh, okay.
And we were both surprised that a James Bond book was in, it was in like the teen section. So I got that out of the library and that was the first one that I read.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, see, I've not read any of the books. And I think I would enjoy them. I don't love reading spy stuff. It's not my chosen genre in terms of fiction. But I do enjoy it every now and again. So maybe I should read some of the books because I think you get a different Bond.
Yes, you do.
And I think it's way more consistent across, obviously across, Ian Fleming's books. But I think it changes the way you watch the older movies, particularly because you understand so much more about James Bond when you watch them.
And I think the other big problem is the fact that when in the early days they had no concept of a franchise, so they were just making, we're going to take this book, make it into a movie. take this book and make it into a movie.
Yeah.
And they were just picking them left, right, and centre. But if you read the books, there are some that have more of an arc over a couple of the books. A good example is You Only Live Twice, the film that's set in Japan.
Oh, yes. Okay.
It's the last one that Connery did before George Lazenby did the next one, which was On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yes, okay.
The books are the other way around. So On Her Majesty's Secret Service happens
before
Bond gets married and... spoilers, his wife dies, and then the next book is him being sent on essentially a suicide mission, which is You Only Live Twice.
Right.
So like there were through lines in the books. Some of them are just standalone action books, but there are things, there's a bit more character evolution over time, which they couldn't have because they were just like, oh, which book do we do next? Which one? Oh, we do this one, we do that one.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what's lacking, because when I think of sort of the strategy behind like the new James Bond films, they picked specific films for a reason, and they've created stories for a reason. Like they've taken James Bond on a journey as a character. He's evolved, and the character you see in Casino Royale evolves in front of you. Whereas I think maybe that's what's lacking, is that it's almost like these cliched kind of 2D characters. Not that like the acting's necessarily bad or anything like that. It's just you don't get that. And I think maybe if there'd have been, as you say, kind of like a strategy behind making the films in a specific order so that you went on James Bond's journey with James Bond.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe as well there would be a little bit more understanding, I guess, in his personal choices.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, and you know, I think they in the ones I think you'd enjoy the most are the young Bond books.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because they're more like adventures because he's a school kid and stuff like that. And obviously, you know, the whole girl-woman thing isn't really. I mean, there are. He essentially does have his Bond girls, but they're very different in the way they appear in the book because. You know, he's a kid. He's a kid, and they're not necessarily love interests. They just happen to be people he meets, and you know, they can be as feisty as he is. So, yeah, I think you probably like those. That's why I think they'd make great films.
Yeah, and I think it would just, as you say, it would kind of inspire a whole new generation rather than trying to just drag something along because, you know, oh, well, we have to because it's James Bond.
Yes.
It's like, well, you don't actually have to.
No.
You know, there are other opportunities, and obviously there are other books, and there are other characters within the books that you can, you know, really interesting characters that you can play around with. And obviously, if the information isn't there in the book, you kind of have artistic license to sort of play around and create a backstory or take a character down a different route. Like, you know, there's lots to play around with. So, yeah, I think that would be interesting. But I mean, it's one of those things that you just don't really think about. Oh, there's young James Bond books. Yeah. Because I don't think people really know. Like, I didn't really know that was a thing.
Yeah, they started, first one came out in 2010.
Oh, interesting.
I think. So they're fairly recent. Charlie Higson, who used to be on the Fast Show, he wrote the first 5.
Okay.
And they're really, really good.
Interesting.
And then a guy called Steve Cole took over, and he's written the last 4. And I think that's it. I don't know if they've got any plans to do more,
right?
Or who they do them with. I think Higson gave it up because he was working on another book series. But his were brilliant. The Steve Cole ones are good, but I think the Higson's ones had a bit more of the. They just kind of, I don't know. They caught the vibe just slightly better, I think.
Right.
Steve Cole's ones tend to be a bit more bombastic and actiony.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I think you know, if I was in charge, that's what I'd do, because I think it'd be great.
Well, let us know what everyone else thinks. Yeah. Maybe we can put a pitch together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I was trying to think when I was watching this, and I was like, oh, is there anything like I really love? Do I have a favorite moment? Is there anything I really hate? Like, do I have a favorite character? And I really struggled to like answer any of those questions.
Really?
Yeah. Like a lot. I just was kind of uninspired, I think.
Really? Because I mean, I love the scene in Q Branch, because that's like I think I think that's the first time you go into Q Branch in the movies. I think every time before that, Bond's always been given his thing in M's office. Right. So I think only I don't think he gets anything in Doctor No, or does he? He might get something there. Geiger counter, maybe. And then in From Russia with Love, he gets like a suitcase. But it's in M's office. Here's your gun, here's your thing. Whereas this time it's like a bunker, and you've got a car, and you've got people doing really cool stuff. And, that's kind of like, it's a very typical thing. I like that. There's the classic laser beam through the legs scene.
I mean, it's so cliche.
It is.
I was like, oh, and also because it's like kind of in a cave. Yeah. And I was like, oh, it's like Indiana Jones, kind of, but not.
Do you want to know something amazing?
Yes.
That's the first time a laser ever appears in a film.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. That's so not what I would have thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's created a completely...
Yeah, I mean, as not like a science fiction ray gun or what have you, but like as an actual, this is a thing that could work. I mean, obviously they built a prop, but it's like this thing exists and this is how it works. Like,
wow,
that was the first time. So, and because the reason it's a laser is because in the book it's a buzzsaw, like in a mill, a wooden mill. And he's edging towards it.
That's exactly how the table's set up, right?
Well, exactly, yeah.
You expect there to be a buzzsaw coming in.
And they thought that was too cliche, so they changed it to a laser.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that, and I think the whole scene revolving around Fort Knox is pretty cool. Like it's a what I like about Goldfinger is that you kind of remember it as being like a heist thing. Like they're gonna break into Fort Knox, but they're not there to steal anything. Yeah. And I always thought that was an interesting twist on the
it is really interesting, and it is much more like a heist. Like you get kind of two genres of film in a way, because you get this kind of this spy thriller, like, oh, what's going on? And then because you get this second plan, you're like, oh, okay, actually no, it does seem more like a heist, and it's it's like a jewelry heist kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So that is really good, but I just
left you flat.
Yeah, I did write because I was taking notes and I was writing them on my phone, and I wrote that the Aston Martin. I was like, oh my god, the Aston Martin's so fit. I was like, yes, it is. So I love that, and I did like that with you, and you get to kind of see the boring bit of James Bond's job, I guess, because he's a bit like, oh. Really? Yeah. Like, do I have to stand here listening to you talking about all this boring stuff?
Yeah.
I'll figure it out when I'm, when I'm there and when I need it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny, and I like the humor that's there, because it, you aren't just watching a spy movie. There is more going on.
Yeah.
But I would struggle to pick like a favorite character. I mean, I like James Bond because I like James Bond, but I don't think he's a great character I don't like the character particularly.
Right, I see what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. He's not likable, but he's interesting to watch.
Exactly, it's really interesting to watch on screen, and I'm intrigued by you.
Yeah,
but I'm not rooting for you particularly because I don't really care, because it's also kind of like you don't really care. James Bond doesn't seem to really care whether he lives or dies.
Yeah,
and actually, that's not really that interesting unless you're
unless it's for a cause.
Exactly. Yeah. And there doesn't really seem to be a cause.
No, it's save England, isn't it? That's the thing, which England, we don't really have that kind of attitude.
Exactly. I'm like, save the world.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it's just I'm making, he's been a bit naughty, this gold,
that is true. Yeah. Yeah, because he's not as a villain, he's not like it's not the biggest of plans.
No, and he doesn't seem like evil. No. He doesn't seem to torture people, and he's not threatening in that way, as a villain. So you don't really get why James Bond's bothering. You're just like, well, it's a bit of a meh mission, isn't it? Why are you bothering? And then it's the whole it's Fort Knox, and you're just like, oh, okay. It's like, we're just gonna stop Fort Knox from getting broken into. And it's like, oh, okay. like, well, but I mean, really,
I think it's the use of the nuclear bomb that gets Bond involved, isn't it? That's like the only thing that warrants him being there, really.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's we don't want weapons of mass destruction in the hands of evil people.
Yeah.
But the villains don't really seem evil.
Yeah.
So you're just like, well,
they're more mobsters, aren't they?
Yeah, and you're like,
and I think that is
actually use it
in the books. I think there's a couple where they're more mobsters.
Yeah. They just don't seem as threatening. They're not as dangerous. And like the fact that he's just walking casually around the ranch.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Like, he's just not.
Do you know that Sean Connery didn't go to the US for this film?
Did he not?
No. So all of his stuff was shot in England.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Of course he didn't. He was like, no, I don't want to. Much like James Bond, I would imagine would have been. That's really interesting. No, I didn't have any.
Yeah, and also I didn't know until fairly recently that Goldfinger is dubbed for pretty much the entire movie.
Is it?
Yeah. He actually the character of Goldfinger.
Oh, sorry.
Because Gert Frober, who played him, his accent was too strong.
Oh my goodness!
So they got another actor to dub him with a slightly less German accent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's done really well. It isn't like
I wouldn't have noticed that at all.
No,
not at all. That's fascinating. Do you have a favorite character in this film?
I mean,
I'm intrigued.
Character, no. I mean, the trouble is, I think it's because it's you like James Bond as a character, and then Q, you think of them as bigger than any single movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of feel like Goldfinger's an interesting character.
Yeah.
And there's Oddjob, and there's some interesting stuff in there. But like you say, there's no one you kind of really, aside from the way you latch on to Bond just because he's Bond. There's nobody else that kind of gets you. Because like you said, in this one particularly, there isn't a Bond girl that goes throughout the movie, really. Because Jill Masterton and Tilly Masterton, they both die pretty quickly.
Because which one's the first?
Jill's the first one who gets painted gold.
Yes, that's right. And then it's her sister Tilly.
Yeah.
And I thought, because she's kind of badass.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah. And when she was in it, I was like, oh, this is going to be so good. And then I was looking at her on screen and I was like, that's not the girl in the film there. And I was like, wait a minute.
Because everyone thinks of Jill Shirley Eaton who gets painted gold at the beginning.
Exactly. And I was like, wait, who's the what? And then she died. And I was like, oh, well, who's the woman in the film? Who's the girl? Who's the love interest? And I mean, because it's such a shame that because I think if they made Goldfinger now, and they didn't have to stay to the book, for example.
Well, I mean, this isn't faithful to the book, particularly. Okay. I haven't read the book for a long time, so I can't remember the exact plot of the book, but it's different to the film.
See, I would have... Seeing the Tilly that you see in this, she's the only character that I was like, oh, yeah, I want to watch this character's journey because she's got, like... She's trying to avenge her sister's death.
Yeah.
She's angry. She's spontaneous because she's full of like rage and hate. She hasn't got the skill or the know-how to achieve what she wants to. And like, you don't want James Bond to help and do it for her, but you kind of want her to find her own way and get there.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I was like deflated after she like dies so quickly in the film. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, that's a bit, there's not really anybody that I'm fascinated by or rooting for. Yeah, which I think is why I felt the whole thing was just a bit, flat's not the right word, because I did like enjoy watching it. But yeah, just a bit meh.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's difficult because like even Pussy Galore, like she's got like her troupe of amazingly skilled pilots, and they're all women, and it's really empowering, and she's this amazing.
Look, in the books, they're all supposed to be like lesbians, and they are, sure. and it's that's the thing, is that I think that's the thing in the book, that she becomes the main woman that Bond becomes interested in.
Yeah.
Because obviously she's a challenge.
Yeah.
and
that's such a cliche as
well.
It
is,
like,
absolutely
God.
is. And like in the film, it's just like, oh, come on, really?
I know, literally. I'm like, really? Because it's just not handled well.
No.
Like, it's so bad. But even her, who's this kind of, it's like she could have any job she wanted with her skill set.
Yeah.
Because she's so talented as a pilot. But she chooses to kind of work for a villain. And you're like, well, but why? Is it the money? Like, is it the lifestyle? Like, what? Where's the connection there? And yeah, I didn't respect her either, because she, she just gets James Bond. And I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just not, not that obviously you can do whatever you want as a woman. But like, yeah, it didn't really make any sense. Like her storyline and her motivations behind anything that she was doing.
No, I think they do make more sense in the books.
Yeah.
And it's just a case of like, they're chopping stuff out, character stuff out to make the film work.
Yeah.
In terms of its pacing and its stuff like that. And I think a lot of that stuff just falls by the wayside, gets lost, and it's a shame.
It is a shame, because it'd be really interesting to find out more about the psychology behind the character.
Yeah.
And obviously if it is in the book, then great. But yeah, I don't know. Very interesting. Is there anything that you were like, oh, that's not good, that doesn't work? Because obviously as a Bond fan, probably more so than me.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously the attitude towards women notwithstanding, it's kind of, that's the really big thing that makes it feel not, it's dating it and stuff. And there's an extent to which you can just forgive that stuff. But there's some occasionally it's kind of like, no, maybe not so much.
You can't really.
So it's starting to tread that very fine line between just, it's just an old movie, as to, actually, no, that doesn't feel right anymore.
Yeah, because it's not that old.
No. I mean, it was 64, isn't it? So
yeah.
But in terms of not holding up, I think the action's generally pretty good. Like, the set design is amazing, and the cinematography is great, and
it's a really easy, nice film to watch in that respect. But it's not. It's so funny because I keep thinking of films that I've been like blown away by that we've watched. Like The Third Man. Yeah. When I think of that as like a thriller, kind of spy-ish. I mean, it's not, but kind of.
Guy Hamilton was assistant director on The Third Man.
Okay.
So there was a few of them that kind of transition over into Bond.
That. Yes, and we were talking about
that. So there's a bit of a hint there. But I wonder if you're right in that we were so thrilled by The Third Man that this is actually a bit of a
letdown.
Bit of a come down. Which is funny, because I never thought I'd feel that way about a James Bond movie.
No, and sometimes it's just, it catches you because it's the mood you're in, or it's the film you've just watched before, and it impacts what you think about that new film. But yeah, I think maybe that's it. Maybe it's because we watched The Third Man and I loved it, and then we watched Alien and I love it, and it's so different. Yeah. And then to kind of come to this, I was like, just a bit
flat.
Just a bit, just a little.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you want to chip in about with Goldfinger? Oh my gosh, the music.
Oh yeah.
Whoops. Like, I loved the scene. With the song and the like playing around with the gold, like the image, like I love that.
Maurice Binder and his incredible title sequences.
I mean, that to be fair was probably worth watching the whole movie.
Yeah.
That was probably my favourite bit.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's peak Bond, isn't it? Like Shirley Bassey belting out.
It's just so classic.
Yeah,
like I loved it. I loved watching that, and also I think it pitched the movie like that was going to be this like iconic, amazing film, and then I was like, oh, where's that movie? But yeah, obviously we forgot, but I mean that's such an iconic thing. The music,
the score,
the leading ladies,
is amazing.
The vocals and the score is just brilliant.
I was reading somewhere that the first person to hear the score, I think it was for this film, first person to hear the score was Michael Caine.
No
because
way.
John Barry, either Michael Caine or John Barry, I think it was Michael Caine, needed somewhere to stay. And he was staying at John Barry's house, or the other way. Yeah, it must have been that way around. And John Barry was finishing off the score. And one morning, Caine woke up, and Barry was like, "Come and listen to this." And he just played him the whole.
Oh my gosh!
Thing. Yeah.
Can you imagine waking up in the morning for a cup of coffee and being played the new James Bond score? Just
exactly.
cash?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Huh? That's so interesting. I mean, what a treat.
Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting. So hopefully next year, we'll look at the Ipcris file, which is Michael Caine's 60s spy movies.
Yes,
or spy movie. About this before. So I'm intrigued to see whether you're going to like that more or less.
Interesting.
That's going to be really fascinating.
Tune in next year, listeners,
exactly,
to find out.
Yeah. Just a heads up.
Yeah, Cash, just keep listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I guess we'll.
Yeah. But instead of next year, maybe we should talk about what we're doing
next week. Well, next week we have a huge pace change, and we are going to be talking about Dead Poets Society. So I've never seen this.
Neither have I.
Oh, okay. So neither of us can pitch how good the movie is to each other. I mean, obviously, Robin Williams.
I know it's Robin Williams, some lads, some kind of like.
I know the catchphrase. Oh, Captain, my Captain.
Yeah, oh, Captain, my Captain.
And I know the ending because it's in Friends.
Oh, right.
If there's any other Friends fans out there, which is also very dated, and I have issues rewatching. But anyway, if there's any other Friends fans out there, when Monica gets her credit card stolen,
right,
and she actually ends up meeting the person that's stolen her credit card but doesn't hand her in straight away. And anyway, she goes off on all these big adventures and gets drunk and is just behaving unlike Monica. And the woman, she's like, "Oh my gosh, why are you like this? Why do you live life as if it's every day is your last day?" And the woman says, "Well, it was because I watched Dead Poets Society."
Right.
And she's like, "Really?" Because obviously it's like not really a life-changing movie in that respect, apparently. And she says, "Well, it was just the most boring movie I've ever watched in my life. And I left the cinema and was like, that's 2 hours of my life I'm never going to get back, and I'm not doing it ever again."
Amazing.
But she does actually say what happens in it, because she's like, kid, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I won't spoil. So I know how it ends, but I don't know how it happens.
Okay, right.
So that's it, really, in terms of my knowledge of the movie. I don't really know anyone else that talks about it, but it's referred to as this iconic movie.
Yeah, it's up there, and then I think there are the seize the day quote is often quoted as in the top quotes, top 100 quotes from movies. It's always in there somewhere,
right in there.
So I think Robin Williams, he had this thing about him where there were certain movies that he did, and everyone was just like, "This is." Yeah, he's amazing in this. So,
I'm excited to watch it.
I'm interested.
Sad watching it because of Robin Williams, and that it'll be interesting. And I think there's a few familiar faces in there in terms of the kids that are in it, the guys. So that'll be curious to chat about. But yeah, do you have anything else to say with Dead Poets? Do you know anything else about it? Literally nothing.
No.
Amazing. Okay, well, I guess tune in next week, and we will figure out what we think about Dead Poets Society.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.